We're gonna be talking about how to buy parts, telling you how to make sure you get it right. Like, would you think you need a coolant O-ring to replace a serpentine belt? You'd be surprised. Ordering parts, especially in the exotics, it can be very frustrating because if something's leaking inside the engine, it's not just that part that you're gonna have to replace. So today we're gonna kind of talk about my process to going through and ordering parts. Now, if you work at a shop, it's gonna be a little different than someone at home. If you are in a shop or you own your own shop and you wanna buy parts, you should sign up with the dealership's data service. So like Aston Martin, for instance, is Aston Martin Technical Hub. If you just Google that, you'll pull that up and you can sign up as a dealer or an independent shop and then get access, pay for a subscription to get access to workshop manuals and parts diagrams. This is an expense, but I promise you, if you try to skip out on doing this, you're gonna pay way more in wasted time and labor hours trying to get jobs done correctly. If you're a private owner and you wanna work on your own car, well, if it's a very new car, unfortunately, you probably are not gonna be able to get access to that data. But if you are working on your own car, typically these are a little bit older cars and this information is readily available. So where do you get the data? For workshop manuals, you'll go to something like emanuals.com or manualslibrary.com. On emanuals.com, you'll be able to see thousands of repair manuals. You can try to buy it there. For this Ferrari $599, we're gonna go ahead and do the valve cover gasket. So I go here to engine and operations and engine overhaul disassembly. And in this, there's a subsection of removing the head covers. So then it's gonna say disconnect the battery. I don't think I need to go there to look for parts. That should be pretty easy. But when you're getting started and it's a car you haven't worked on before, you should probably go to each one of these sections. When you go through this whole process and you're seeing like, oh, I'm gonna need a clip here. I'm gonna need a gasket or here possibly. I'm gonna need a clip there. Then you've got your valve cover gaskets. And while you're in there, this gives you access to your spark plug holes. So we're gonna go ahead and do spark plugs. Also, if you look right here, you can see that this is where the variable timing solenoids are. And these solenoids often leak when they get old. You can see them right here. And so maybe consider replacing those because they operate with oil pressure, and oil, especially the stuff the manufacturer is using, turns acidic and starts to push oil up into the plugs. So with the amount of labor that it requires to get to this part, maybe you should just go ahead and replace it. You're talking about 12 to 14 hours of labor if you put this back together and then a year later they start leaking. You need to go through each step and then go look at the car and see these components that you're removing. Are they brittle plastic components? Are they something that may break? Should I order replacements for? Then you're gonna need to go with each part that you think you might need to replace, you write it down, and then you need to go to your parts diagram. Again, if you're a private user of the car, you're not gonna be able to get it from the dealer necessarily, so there's a couple ways to go about this. There's websites like realoem.com or scuderiacarparts.com, or even like some dealers, like for instance Ducati of Omaha has the parts diagrams available online for you to go through. So then at this point, you're gonna need to go yourself and find the part numbers for your vehicle. And then I go here to dealer login, or let's say Scuderia Car Parts. We'll go ahead and pull up a Ferrari $599. And again, you're gonna be hit with a giant list of diagrams, and it's not easy enough just to go, hey, I just need valve cover gaskets. I'm just gonna buy the valve cover gasket. We're gonna go ahead and show you what a valve cover looks like. So obviously both those intakes had to come out, and then we had to take the valve cover off. And as you can see, a ton of hoses and wires that you cannot take off, that you have to fish this around. It's a very tricky job. As we're unplugging these cam variator solenoids, yeah, they're located under the valve cover, but these wires stick out through the valve cover. And you can see that one has a little bit of oil in it. Problem is when you get to ones like this one here, is coated in oil. See that little pool of oil in there? That's gonna cause a check engine light. Eventually that's gonna start tripping out those solenoids because the oil can cause a bad connection or a short there. On top of that, you're just gonna have leaks. And you know how much one of those is? It's $1,581. And going through that process, we're able to see, okay, this timing solenoid, it comes through the valve cover. So maybe we get those and replace those. pick out your parts. Also, we know that the intake manifold has to come off. We're gonna go ahead and go to this parts diagram and see there's a ton of gaskets. You can see all these little gaskets have to be replaced. There's gaskets down here on the bottom that need to be replaced. A clamp here. There's usually an O-ring on this right here. You can see part number 15 right here. So you're gonna go to part number 15 on this diagram. You're gonna copy that, go to your notes, and go ahead and add that to your list. This way, when you call the dealer, you have part numbers to help you, because the dealership parts guy does not know a lot. His job is to search and provide part numbers. And if you say, give me a belt, he may give you a pulley. It's happened to me before. So you need to come prepared with part numbers. Another thing that you're gonna wanna do before you go ahead and buy these parts is check with the manufacturer for technical service bulletins or recalls. You need to make sure that, especially if you're buying your part online, you're not buying one of the old parts that is still brand new, but is an old design that's going to fail. If the item that you're about to replace is under a recall or there is an extended warranty due to a known problem, then you might not even have to pay for the repair at all. You can take it to the dealer and let them do it for free. Or if you have already done it, you can sometimes seek compensation for having that repair done. So it's a good idea just to know if there was a known fault. You want to make sure you're going to solve the problem and not have to address it again soon. Now that you have your part numbers and your procedures down and you know what you're going to need, let's go buy the parts. Now, if you're a shop, more than likely, you're probably going to want to buy through the dealer, just because the amount of time that it takes, especially if a part comes damaged, which it does happen, the dealership will usually be easier to deal with as far as like getting those parts replaced or returned. But there are other companies like GT Car Parts or specialist companies like Flying Spares for Bentleys and Rolls-Royce parts that will have an excellent dealer quality part or dealer part at a lower price. If you're the end user and you're not a shop, I can highly recommend this, because trying to get through to your dealership and getting parts, it's just a little bit of a battle, dude. Parts people are not easy to deal with. If you call someplace like Flying Spares for Bentley or Velocity AP for Aston Martin stuff, then you're gonna get someone who actually has a little bit of insight, and they may give you some tips. They might even tell you of an aftermarket company that's got a part better than the factory. For instance, the Ferrari F430 has a problem where the header is cracked, and it's been narrowed down to having a poor mount for the exhaust. It translates a lot of pressure onto the headers, and a company called Capistro has a solution, a bracket that holds the exhaust that eliminates this problem with cracking, and that the dealer is not going to tell you about. So going to these other parts companies, that may reveal some secrets. Again, if they do offer you any kind of advice like that, make sure you hit the forums and call some shops maybe and pick their brain if you can get someone to talk to you and be like, hey, what do you think about this? Because aftermarket is a risky thing. Designing a part and putting it on a car, it's without going through the R&D that the manufacturer can afford to send their parts through, it can be risky. So make sure you go with someone who's reputable if you go that route. If you do decide to buy from, let's say, Scuderia Car Parts or Pelican Parts, there are some drawbacks to doing this. You should definitely verify your part numbers with the dealer before you order your parts. Pelican Parts, for instance, recently on a Porsche GT3 manual transmission overhaul, said that a bearing would work and fit my car. And it did fit the car. However, the bearing was made for a normal 911. The rollers were much smaller, and so it was not able to handle the horsepower that the GT3 has. While when I got the part, I could install it, but it didn't perfectly match. And I again called a specialist who told me it does fit, but it's not gonna be the best thing. It'll probably break. And so at that point, I had to go to the dealer to get the right parts. So just be careful about that. As far as like part brands, you really, if you decide not to go to the dealer to get the parts, make sure you stick with OEM again, or a more reputable company. We have another video about how to know what brands to trust, what are really original equipment manufacturers. So I'd encourage you to watch that video. If you're going with aftermarket companies, unfortunately, you're more likely going to be doing this job over again in a very short time.